Elias was a merchant, nothing more, nothing less. His life revolved around the simple trade of goods and artifacts, a life that kept him out of trouble. His ship, a sturdy vessel that had seen its share of battles and dusty market lanes, floated between worlds in the vastness of the galaxy. It was a humble existence, yet Elias was content, for he had never known anything else. But as he stepped onto the crowded auction floor on the alien planet of Zalor Prime, he would be faced with the decision that would change everything. The bustling market was alive with alien voices and the sound of currency exchanged. Merchants shouted their wares, traders argued over deals, and strange creatures moved about, their eyes scanning the sea of visitors. Elias had seen it all before: rare spices from the Galvan Nebula, weapons from the fallen cities of Draken, and 1,000 other objects that held little meaning to him. He was only here to find one thing: a rare ancient artifact he had been tracking for months. The item, a relic from a forgotten civilization, was worth a small fortune, but what he didn't expect to find was the woman who would change his fate. She stood at the center of the auction floor, a silent figure draped in tattered robes. Her posture was straight, as if she refused to bow to her circumstances, though she stood chained and exposed in front of a crowd of onlookers. A former warrior, it was clear from the scars that crisscrossed her arms and face, marks of battles fought, victories won. Yet here she was, a captive, being sold like an object for the highest bidder. Elias could feel her eyes before he saw them, sharp, piercing, and full of something more than just despair. There was a flicker of something that he couldn't place, something raw and defiant, that caught his attention immediately. The crowd murmured, passing judgment on the woman who had once been a respected figure in her own world. To them, she was just another casualty of the galaxy's endless wars, a broken piece of history. But Elias saw something different. The auctioneer, a reptilian creature with glowing yellow eyes, called for bids, his voice booming over the crowd. "This is a rare one, folks," a former warrior of the Alazran Empire once feared across the stars. Now, she is nothing but a slave, waiting for a new master. Who will give her a new purpose? Elias didn't care about her past. It wasn't his concern. What mattered to him was the energy in the air around her, the mystery that clung to her like a shroud. As the bidding started, he stood still, watching, his fingers brushing the edge of his coat. The price climbed quickly, higher than he had anticipated. Yet Elias found himself growing more and more intrigued. What had brought her to this point? What had happened to her? He stepped forward, slowly, carefully. He wasn't the type to make impulsive decisions, but something about her made him act without thinking. Without any real plan, he raised his hand. The auctioneer's eyes snapped to him, a sly grin crossing his face. "Ah, we have a bidder. The human merchant, I see. You've got good taste, friend. Do I hear more?" The bidding war continued, but Elias didn't back down. His mind raced, but his heart seemed to have already made the decision for him. His hand remained raised, and as the final bid was called, the room fell silent. Elias had won. The crowd's murmurs were mixed, some in disbelief, others with amusement at the audacity of a human outbidding them all for a warrior woman who had long since been discarded. Elias walked forward, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached her, she stood there, her face unreadable. The chains around her wrists clinked softly, the only sound breaking the heavy silence. She met his gaze, her eyes flashing with something. Something he couldn't define, but he could feel it deep within himself. Without a word, the auctioneer handed Elias the keys to her chains. Elias unlocked them and stepped back. The woman, still silent, rubbed her wrists as though the chains had been a part of her for so long that the relief of being free felt strange. She looked at Elias, her gaze intense and unflinching. "Please purchase me, human," she murmured, her voice low but clear, as though the words carried weight far beyond the simple request. The room seemed to hold its breath. Elias blinked, unsure of what he had just heard. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice uncertain. The woman's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I did not ask for freedom. I asked to be purchased for a reason." Elias stared at her, unsure of what to make of this. Was she simply broken, or was there something more behind her words? He didn't know, but he felt the stirring in his chest. This wasn't just about her being a slave or a former warrior. She was something else, someone who had experienced things he could never understand. And yet, he felt drawn to her in a way that confused him. He had paid for a warrior, but now he wasn't sure what he had really bought. The woman's gaze softened ever so slightly, and she bowed her head. "My name is Zara," she said simply, her tone carrying a quiet dignity. "Elias," he replied, offering a hand. She hesitated for a moment before taking it, her grip firm but wary. As the two of them left the auction hall together, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. His life as a simple merchant had just collided with something far larger and far more dangerous than he could have imagined. What had he gotten himself into? And why did Zara, this mysterious alien warrior, look at him as if he were the key to a puzzle he didn't even know existed? They walked in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them both. Elias knew that he had just made a decision that would alter the course of his life, but he had no idea just how far-reaching that decision would become. Zara's quiet request, a simple plea for him to purchase her, echoed in his mind. What had she meant by it? And what was her story? Elias couldn't help but wonder if he was about to uncover a truth that would change not just his own future, but the future of the galaxy itself. As Elias and Zara made their way through the bustling streets of Zalor Prime, the sound of the crowd faded into the background, leaving only the rhythmic steps of their boots on the dusty pavement. The alien city sprawled before them, a chaotic mix of towering spires and narrow alleys, a place where wealth and poverty lived side by side. It was a city of trade, of secrets, and of danger. Elias knew it well. It was his home base when he wasn't traveling the stars. But now, with Zara walking beside him, everything felt different. Her presence was unsettling, not because of who she was, but because of the quiet intensity that radiated from her. The weight of her past hung heavy in the air around them, though she said nothing. She walked beside him, her gaze fixed on the path ahead, her shoulders straight and proud despite the chains that had once held her captive. Elias didn't know what to make of her. She was a puzzle, a mystery, wrapped in the shroud of her past. And he was unsure if he was the one who could help her unlock it. Yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt responsible for her now. He had purchased her, but there was more to it than just buying a slave or a warrior. Zara wasn't like the others he had encountered in his travels. There was something in the way she carried herself, something that suggested she was no ordinary person. As they reached his ship, a large vessel parked at the edge of the market. Elias couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of anticipation and unease. The ship had always been a place of solitude for him, a refuge from the world. Now, with Zara on board, he was unsure of what that solitude would look like. Would he be sharing his quiet space with a broken soul, or was there something more to Zara than what met the eye? He led her up the ramp, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. Inside, the ship was as it always had been. Clean, organized, and full of the small comforts Elias had collected over the years. There were crates of merchandise scattered about, but there was a certain warmth to the place, a calm that had always kept him grounded. Zara stepped inside without a word, her eyes scanning the space before her. She didn't seem surprised by the simplicity of the ship. If anything, she seemed more focused on the task at hand, whatever that might be. Elias gestured toward the small seating area. "Make yourself at home," he said, unsure of what else to say. He didn't know how to begin a conversation with her. They had come from two very different worlds, and there was a gap between them that no words could easily bridge. She didn't sit down immediately. Instead, she walked over to one of the windows, looking out at the city below. Her fingers brushed the cool glass, her reflection merging with the skyline in the distance. She looked like a woman trapped between two worlds, the one she had been forced to leave behind and the one she now found herself in. Elias stood in silence, watching her. After a long moment, Zara turned to him. "I did not ask for freedom," she said, her voice steady but distant. "I asked to be purchased." The words hit him harder than he expected. Elias furrowed his brow, trying to understand what she meant. Why? "I don't understand. You could have been free." "You could have escaped on your own." Zara's eyes softened, and for the first time, there was a hint of vulnerability in her gaze. "Freedom means nothing if you have no purpose," she said quietly. "I had a purpose once. I was a warrior. I fought for my people. But that was before the betrayal. Before everything fell apart." Elias listened intently, his curiosity growing. "Betrayal?" Zara nodded, her face hardening as if the memories were too painful to bear. "The Alazran Empire was once powerful. I was a leader, chosen to protect the sacred relics of our people. I fought in wars across the galaxy, commanding armies and ensuring our survival. But power corrupts, and soon my own people turned against me. The Empire's leaders wanted the relics for themselves. They betrayed me, cast me aside as if I were nothing." She paused, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. "They left me to die on a distant planet. But I survived. I always survive." Elias could feel the weight of her words. He could hear the anger in her voice, the pain that was buried just beneath the surface. "So you're not just a former warrior, you're a survivor." Zara's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "I am more than that. I am the last of my kind." Elias didn't know what to say. He had heard stories of fallen empires, of warriors cast aside, but hearing it from Zara, seeing the emotion in her eyes, made it real. This wasn't just some passing tale. This was her life, her reality. And now, she was here, with him, a stranger. He stepped closer to her, his voice soft. "What do you want from me, Zara? Why did you want me to purchase you?" For a moment, Zara didn't answer. She turned back to the window, her reflection merging with the stars outside. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "I need to find the relics, the ones I was supposed to protect. They are still out there, hidden, waiting to be found, and someone must stop the others from using them. If I do not succeed, the galaxy will burn." Elias's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this. This wasn't just about her freedom. It wasn't just about her survival. There was a greater purpose at play here, something much larger than the two of them. He took a step back, trying to process everything. "You want me to help you find them?" Zara turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "I cannot do this alone. I need someone who understands the risks, someone who is willing to stand by me no matter what happens." Elias could feel the weight of her gaze. He could feel the gravity of her words. She wasn't asking for help out of weakness. She was asking because she had no choice. He had never been one for grand adventures or heroic quests. He was just a merchant, a simple man, who preferred the quiet of his ship to the chaos of the galaxy. But something about Zara's plea stirred something inside him. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he couldn't just walk away from this.
"Not now. I'll help you,"
he said, his voice steady. "But you need to know this won't be easy. We'll be hunted. There are people out there who will stop at nothing to get to those relics, and we don't know what we're walking into." Zara nodded, her expression hardening once more. "I know, but I have no choice." And with that, the decision was made. For the first time, Elias felt the weight of the journey ahead. He wasn't just a merchant anymore. He was a man caught in a web of ancient power, of betrayal and war, and a mission that would take him to the very heart of the galaxy's deepest secrets. The path they were about to walk was dangerous, but it was one he could no longer turn away from. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Elias set a course for the unknown, and with Zara by his side, he knew their lives would never be the same again. The stars stretched out before them, a sea of infinite possibilities. Elias sat at the controls of the ship, his fingers brushing the cool metal as he guided them through the vast emptiness of space. Zara stood by the observation window, her eyes fixed on the swirling lights of distant galaxies. She hadn't said much since their decision to search for the relics. The silence between them felt heavier than it had before, filled with unspoken thoughts and fears. Elias glanced over at her, noting the intensity of her gaze. He had learned a lot about her over the past few days, but there was still so much left unsaid. Zara was a woman of few words, but when she spoke, it was clear that every syllable carried weight. She had been through so much, far more than anyone should ever have to endure. Yet there was something about her, something that made him want to help her, even if he didn't fully understand why. "Do you ever sleep?" Elias asked, breaking the silence. Zara didn't turn from the window, but he could see the faintest movement of her shoulders. "Sleep is a luxury I no longer afford myself," she replied, her voice low. "My mind is always awake, always running." Elias nodded, understanding more than she knew. He, too, had been running for as long as he could remember, always chasing the next deal, the next opportunity. But this journey was different. This wasn't just another business venture. They were heading toward something far more dangerous and far more important than anything Elias had ever encountered. "You said the relics were hidden," Elias said, his voice thoughtful. "How do you know where to find them?" Zara's eyes flickered briefly, and she finally turned to face him. "I don't," she said simply. "I only know where they might be." The relics were scattered across different planets, hidden by my people to protect them from those who would misuse their power. I once held the key to their location, but it was taken from me. I was betrayed. Elias leaned back in his seat, trying to absorb the gravity of her words.
"So, you're looking for them because they're dangerous?" Zara nodded, her face hardening.
Yes.
"They hold the power to change the balance of the galaxy. If they fall into the wrong hands, entire worlds could burn. My people understood this, and that's why we protected them. But now they are scattered, lost, and the people who betrayed me are searching for them." Elias's mind raced as he considered the implications. "And you're the only one who can find them." Zara's gaze met his, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Yes, but I cannot do it alone." Elias swallowed hard, his throat dry. The weight of the situation was beginning to settle on his shoulders. He had always considered himself a simple man, a merchant who traded goods and traveled the stars in peace. But now he was part of something much bigger than himself, something that could shape the future of the galaxy. "What's the first step?" Elias asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension in his chest. Zara's expression softened, but only slightly. "We need to find the first relic. It's hidden on a planet called Qualaris. It's a desolate place, long abandoned by my people, but it's where the first clue lies. If we can find it, we can track the others."
Qualaris? Elias repeated, committing the name to memory.
"How far is it?" "Several days," Zara replied. "But we'll need to be careful. The journey will be perilous. There are others who seek the relics, and they won't stop until they have them." Elias nodded, understanding the danger that lay ahead. But there was no turning back now. They were already committed. Over the next few days, the tension aboard the ship only grew. Elias couldn't help but notice how distant Zara had become. She had always been reserved, but now it seemed as though she was lost in thought. her mind occupied by the weight of her mission. He tried to engage her in conversation, but she remained distant, her responses brief and curt. It was as if the closer they got to Kelleries, the further she pulled away. Elias knew that Zara had a past she wasn't ready to share, but he also understood that, whatever it was part of who she was. He couldn't push her for answers, not yet. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they went into this journey, the more they would have to confront. Not just the physical dangers of the galaxy, but the emotional toll it was taking on both of them. One evening, as Elias was going over the ship's systems checking for any potential malfunctions, Zara entered the control room. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him work, before speaking. "We'll need to prepare," she said, her voice steady but tinged with something Elias couldn't quite place. He looked up from his work, meeting her gaze.
Prepare for what? For what lies ahead, she replied. Kelleries is not just an abandoned world.
There are things there. Things that will test us, both physically and mentally. The relics were hidden for a reason. The ones who seek them won't stop, and they won't hesitate to destroy anyone